This Hangout on Air is now live. Welcome to Break the Cage Saturday, the second of a three-part series. I didn't have my right lower overlay because I had a beautiful one with Manny in it, and I apologize to our esteemed and powerful guest, Manny St. Victor. We are talking today about integrity. This is the second of a three-part series that is extremely important. It is it's a foundation piece. Now, many of you are following a series that I'm putting on Facebook, and that's great. Thank you. And been getting a lot of comments, private messages, and other kinds of things. I'm adjusting the camera a bit. Keys to power are those principles and things that you or I, any of us, need to do to have the power we want to create a life, either in money, job, satisfaction, love, relationship, connectedness to family, connectedness to God, purpose, serving, all of those words that we use around the meaning of life need power to create them. Keys to power is the way that happens. One of the things that we will talk about in the Keys to Power series is what we're spending 3 sessions on now, which is integrity. Today is number 2. Last week we talked about what it is. What is integrity? And we came away with the idea that it is living, acting, and being consistent with how you speak and how you present yourself to be. In other words, there is a congruence, a connection, and I'm thinking of a word in another language because I speak several, an agreement, a complete agreement between who you project yourself to be and who you actually are. Today, we're going to talk about something else, which is why you care. What does integrity do for you? Why would you spend the effort and energy? Because it's not easy. The easy way through everything is just to do what's handy. You know, live in the moment, do whatever's handy, whatever feels good right that second. And there are people who live that way. And I know some, you know some. I know some people that have lived that way for a time. I have. And those kinds of outcomes do not tend for long-lasting happiness. So our guest today is Manny St. Victor, who's a psychiatrist and a world-renowned cool guy who is with us to talk about these principles. And I asked Manny to first riff on something. I'm going to just turn it over to him. I'm going to approach this first from the negative point of view. So if you or I, Manny, this is a question to you, and you can then riff when I'm done. If you or I or anyone live in a state of non-integrity, we do whatever's handy at the moment, we say whatever we need to exist in a situation, and then the next second, minute, hour, day, week, year, we do something else because we got a better offer, or it's not convenient, or it's not handy, and we live all the time with sort of situational ethics, and everything is just whatever makes me feel good and works for me right now. If I live in that world, which essentially is everything from lying to myself about who I am, what I believe, what I'm going to do, whether or not I get up in the morning, work out, am truthful or honest at work, and all of the range of things. So the question is, if I'm a consistent liar, and that's a harsh word, but so what, and I live that way, what does that do to me mentally, either chemistry-wise or psychologically? I'm petting my bald head because there's no hair there, but that's okay. What does it do to me? What does it do to me as a person? You want to talk about that for a minute?
Well, it takes away your sense of identity, your sense of authority. And by authority, I use the word like author. You're not writing your own story. The universe writes your story for you. You develop what's called an external locus of control. As it turns out, when you have enough early life stress, there's a part of your brain where your identity lives called your default mode network. It's like an electrochemical kind of system. And it looks different for people who have an external locus of control versus an internal locus of control. And you end up with, at the end of your life, with this story, and marketing companies call it survivor story. You're like, life was awful, I made it through, I got through, so many things happened to me, but I made it. Versus, I created this, I did this, I found opportunities, I overcame these challenges. It creates a whole different narrative at the end of it all.
Can you define for us, and I want you to talk some more about it, but what is an external locus of control and why do I care?
It's making excuses. It's the victim story. It's I'm in jail because you tempted me. I was unfaithful to my wife because she was beautiful. I stole this because you left it where it was accessible. It's the perpetual. They call it in neuroscience Lermite syndrome, hypofrontality. You let environmental dependency syndrome is another story, another frame they use for it. It means that whatever mousetrap is there, you get caught in it, and you end up in your life with these constant situations where you don't ever claim your power and do the things that have to happen because you think it's too hard.
So that's a real important mouthful of stuff. I'm going to go back and dissect that a little bit before we go to the positive side, which is what living in integrity in all of its facets does for us. An external locus of control sounds to me like I am consistently in the mode of blaming or finding reasons why whatever happened wasn't my fault. If there is, fault meaning I'm not responsible. I stole your $1,000 because you left it there. It was a good one that you did. And I was, unfaithful because she was pretty and the opportunity was there. Or I embezzled money at work because I could. And the opportunity was there when there were no gates. I had an acquaintance, I'm familiar with a situation where someone did that. It was a work situation, and I was quite well acquainted with it. And there were not enough checks and balances, and so this person in this position stole many, many hundreds of thousands of dollars, and eventually they got caught. But it wouldn't really matter whether they had or not. The point was the opportunity was there. There was no oversight, and so the external locus of control meant the opportunity presented itself. So there was a bit of planning and conniving and calculating to get it done. So it wasn't just like a crime of opportunity. It was something that happened because it presented itself, but there was no internal boundary to keep me from doing that. What does that do to me as a person? You said something about not claiming my power. I end up with a narrative of, I just made it through, as opposed to taking any responsibility for what happened. What does that mean as a person? Who am I then? If I'm one of those people?
Nobody. You're nobody. You end up with the story that the world made. Look what you made me do. You end up, because at the end of the day, you're accountable to yourself. There's a story that you're running in your head, and that story involves agency. It involves integrity. It involves the times that you did the things that are aligned with what you value in life. If you go through your whole life letting, like Pavlov, letting the environment dictate what you do and don't do, at the end of it all, there's emptiness. You look back and there's emptiness. There's no story of me. There's just the story of the world imposing on you.
So thank you. It's a very powerful answer, because I know that you're associated with the things that I do. And one of the things we talk about all the time is the thing that gives you power to serve others in a unique and powerful way is always tied to your developmental story. In other words, what you have done and created out of what happened to and around you. And when we talked about the story template, what happened to me, what did I learn, and how can I help those that I want to serve with those learnings? And so it sounds like a person who is not in integrity continually comes from a place of, I can do nothing, I am nothing, I'm not acting until I'm situationally stimulated, and whatever good or bad outcome there wasn't me anyway, it was whatever was laying around.
Exactly. And you can eventually, and one of the stories I like to think about is the elephant with the piece of string, where it starts off, you train the baby elephant with a chain, a really tight chain. It's painful to move it, to pull against it. It kind of cuts the baby, and it keeps them tied to a location. Over time, you can eventually replace, as the elephant gets big and strong enough to break the chain, you can just use a piece of string with the same cuff, you put it on there, and he'll never try to pull it because he spent his whole life learning that he can't break that limiting belief. And that's what we do. It could be acquired at times. Like you look at, I like to use a doctor story because, my whole model is break the cage and dig. There's a lot of docs who are miserable, but they don't leave because they don't remember there was a time that they were powerful enough to plow through people telling them that they couldn't become a doctor. They've lost that power. You could eventually lose your power and get stuck somewhere and start buying the narrative. You're stuck here. You can't do anything else.
How many people are stuck because of one and I realize it's not permanent. It's like I get a cold, I can get over it. I get even a bad disease, maybe with the right treatment and care, I can get over it and I can move on. But it seems to me like, and the answer would be everybody, but how many people are like really stuck in a narrative when they're really tied by a string, like the elephant? And I love that story, by the way. How much is that prevalent?
I'd say 90% of the population. If you look at the data for stuff like crossing the chasm, it's anyone who is still doing the lemming when they should be doing something else is tied by some sort of environmental or cultural string. You know, the second you, at some point they said even Einstein was caught in the dogma because he couldn't understand the newer version of his own theory of relativity. It was time, you know, well, it was the quantum theory. As they were upgrading it, as Bohr was introducing new elements to it, he was like, no, you know. And it's the whole principle of when you have a failure of imagination, you're stuck. As soon as you can't come up with something creatively different than what everyone else is doing in your mind and believe that you can accomplish it, you're stuck.
And I want everybody watching this to take notes. A failure of imagination, a failure of your willingness, not even your ability, to creatively imagine a different or a new outcome, or to visualize a situation that is different, to declare. I was a place giving a talk just a few weeks ago, and there was a discussion between declarative and descriptive language. Descriptive language is where we just say stuff the way it is. Now the chair is blue is innocent descriptive language, but it's not my fault is descriptive language that is blaming. And declarative language comes from the ability to reimagine the future and to declare a future, not only intention, but state of being that is consistent with a success of imagination, not a failure.
Yeah. And it takes that extra step because integrity comes into there because you have to be able to project far enough into the future, but have the confidence that you'll be able to do 6, 7, 8, 9 steps consistently until you get there. Like, in order to be a good father, you have to every day do the good father thing. You know, it's not sometimes be a good father, it's consistent delivery of a model that someone can eventually take out in the world and act on.
Consistent delivery. So there's another gem. Failure of imagination and consistent delivery. If I don't live in integrity, can I declare and then create a new future?
No, because when the wind blows in a different direction, you'll be a kite headed in that direction. You can't promise someone you're going to land over there because you don't have that much personal power. If the wind blows too strong, I might not be anywhere near there at the end of the day.
There's another writer downer, folks. You don't have that much personal power. Failure of imagination, your inability to create a future that you can believe in and enact consistently, and a lack of personal power. The awesome, staggering, terrifying consequences of a lack of integrity. Now, I'm going to blow your mind. If you tell somebody you're going to be somewhere at 10 o'clock and you show up at 10:05 consistently, you're not living in integrity. If you tell somebody you're going to do something, I don't care what it is, yourself even, you're going to get up and exercise and lose some weight, and you don't do that, you're not living in integrity. And you might think those are small things, and I'm calling you out on it. Straight up, hardcore to the wall. You're building a pattern of lies. You're building a pattern of failure to act in accordance with what you said or pretended you wanted to be. Ooh, now I imagine I got about 50 people that want to hit me right now, and that's okay. I actually don't care because it's true. So let's switch sides. Manny, do you want to make a comment?
I want to throw one last thing on there.
Please do.
When people, at some point, people give up the power when they'll tell you, I'm always late. And you're like, wow, you've claimed that as part of your identity. That's amazingly disempowering.
Absolutely. And what you then do is you shift the responsibility for the success of the relationship to someone else. You will accommodate the fact that I'm always late, and you will take the responsibility to make this interaction successful anyway. And so you have not only disempowered yourself, but you have completely handed the responsibility for the success or failure of the relationship to somebody else. And then when you get mad when things don't go your way, you can't figure out what's wrong. And the answer is you handed them the keys. and said, you handle this, despite my lateness is only one thing: lack of preparation, lateness, lack of concentration, letting other things interfere, lack of real commitment, all of the pieces. You just deal with the fact that that's the way I am, and then you handle the success of this interaction based on accepting and acquiescing to that BS story I now live in. So Manny, do you have anything to say about my rant before I move on?
It is what it is. It's the way it works. And if someone chooses to take on that narrative, then if it fits in you like walking a mile, they can do so. But you're not going to create a life that's yours.
Okay, so the purpose of this three-part series of integrity was to do a bunch of things. One of them is to stir you up and perhaps irritate you to a degree, which I hope I've done. And if I haven't, I'm going to try harder. Now I want to focus on the positive side, because I will declare to you right now, no one expects anyone to be perfect and every time do everything everybody thinks, says, believes, dreams. That's not what this is about. It's about the difference between someone who regularly accepts a mismatch between what they say or project and what they do, and the difference between someone who understands those happen, makes them right, takes responsibility, declares a new future, or makes a new agreement as appropriate, and then lives into that agreement. The difference between those two people are the difference between the winners and the nobodies. Manny, any thoughts on that?
I agree.
Well, I like that thought. Okay, so let's move on to what integrity does for you if you choose to do it. So let's start with the simplest of things. One of the things I do in my transformational coaching is something called a core four. A core four is a concept that I got in another group that I was in, and they got it from another group, and that's a name for it. I actually been doing that since I was a kid under another name, but it is simply this. Do you create a structure in every day that builds your integrity? So let me give you an example. What I do when I get up in the morning, I call it my morning ritual, my daily ritual. I do some meditation and sacred literature, scripture reading. I do that to empower and remember my connection to God and the universe. I do something intentional that takes a few minutes with respect to my relationships, kids, spouse. I intentionally touch the relationship area of my life. I touch the physical area of my life. I work out, sometimes for a few minutes, sometimes for a couple hours. It just depends on what's going on. I always do it. And then the fourth thing is I always worry about my financial or my business, my ability to take care of myself and those that I have agreed to care for. So by touching those every day, three things happen. One, the first and most important is I am in integrity every day, because I said I'm going to do these four things in the morning, and I make them small so I can do the whole ritual in like an hour, maybe an hour and a half. And if I have to go to work, or I don't anymore, but when I used to go to work, I used to get up really early, like 4 o'clock, so that I could do this stuff before I went to work. Okay, so the first thing it does for you is it makes you a person of integrity every day. You get to set up the day as a winner. I did what I said. In the first hour of the day, I'm a winner. I got it. I did it. Okay. The second thing is it gets rid of, it helps you get rid of another problem, which we focus, especially when we become successful. And that is when we're at work, and Manny, this doctor thing will resonate with you. And I want you to talk about it in a minute. And that is, I work so hard to be successful that when I'm at work, I worry about all the crap I'm not doing at home, and the relationships and the family and the kids and the spouse and whatever, because I'm neglecting them and I know it and I feel bad. And then when I'm at home trying to pretend to do that and cram, 5 days worth in 5 minutes, I then feel guilty for all the crap I'm not doing at work. And so being in integrity every day, doing that kind of ritual gets rid of that. You want to talk about that problem with respect to the people that you work with, Manny?
Yeah, one of the things you find, and this is one metaphor for it, is symbolic self-completion. People will tend to, if you're failing in one area and you're aware of it, then when you go to that area, you overdo it. And by overdo it, you overdo it materially instead of spiritually. You'll buy more stuff. We were at the mastermind, actually Sean's event yesterday, and he was discussing how sometimes people's parents, a child will be like, hey dad, I want to play baseball. And the dad will hand him $1,000 because the dad has misplaced his symbolic stuff, where instead of spending time with you, which means time means love to a child, he'll give you the money because it's more convenient. You know, he's missing the signal. You know, you can't replace everything with overdone gestures. Everything has a time and place. You know, like the metaphor I like is you can't realize that you started baking a cake too late. Crank it up to 450 and bake the cake at 450 for less time.
Good luck with that, right?
Yeah.
All right, so that's a powerful metaphor, and yeah, Sean had actually mentioned that story to me at one time too. You know, go do whatever it is you do to be baseball-y with a bunch of money, and instead of let's go play catch in the yard. Okay, cool. So that's the second thing. First, you get to start every day as a winner. Second, you get to touch all the important areas of your life. And third, when you touch the important areas of your life every single morning, it helps you focus really clearly on what needs the most time that day. Because when you honestly and completely, without prejudgment or anything, just do some of them, touch them, then it's easy to download intuitively, okay, this one needs a lot of attention today. And you've probably planned that the night before, because if you're doing this kind of thing, then you're also planning your life, and you also have some goals that have deadlines and some other stuff that we'll talk about in other hangouts, and we have talked about. But you then create the space for you to correctly and most powerfully allocate your time the rest of the day. Manny, how many people do you know that do nothing but fight fires all day, whether it's in their business life, personal life, or otherwise?
The majority of my clients, when they come to me, that's all they're doing. It seems like most people work on autopilot, and they say I have time management issues, but it's more of integrity and identity management issues. Because if you prioritize the things that you care about most, and you're clear about them, and you remind yourself first thing in the morning every day, and first day of the week, and first day of the month, and first day of the year, you know, if you're clear about those goals, then you just, from there, on autopilot, your brain is wired to automatically sort your most important intentions in order of priority. It will ignore the less important things once you've been clear with yourself about what it is you want to accomplish.
Say that again. Your brain is wired to do what?
It's wired to automatically prioritize your goals based on, or to notice things in the environment that are relevant to your goals based on how you've consciously prioritized them. That's what consciousness is for. Consciousness is for putting things in the right order so that your brain can do the rest on autopilot.
Okay, this is another writer downer. Your head, your habits, your heart, all of the things that drive you will work for you instead of against you if you intentionally and consciously prioritize the things you have to do in a way that is consistent with your core beliefs, values, and desires. So if you actually look long-term at what your real core beliefs and values are, and you set up your intentions to get to a certain place in any of those areas, and then you prioritize your daily, weekly, monthly activities in accordance with those, your head, your body, your habits, those things that we often fight so hard will line up to help you. That's what I just heard you say.
That's what I meant. And you know, humans hear intentions instead of hearing words. That's one of the most powerful things that I ever understood.
Say that again. To do what?
Humans don't hear words, they hear intentions. When someone's talking to you, you infer the meaning of what they say.
That is so important in being in integrity. So let's pull this right square back into integrity. Because when we're having a conversation, every single one of you watching this right now know that you pull out of the conversation what you think you feel, not what you hear in words. I cannot count, and I know each of you cannot count, the number of conversations where you thought you said X, Y, Z, and someone comes back and says, no, you didn't. or where you will repeat back to someone what you thought they said, and the answer is, no, that's not what I said at all. And then they can go get a piece of paper where it's written down what they read, and it's not at all what you're discussing. And the reason is because of what Manny said, your intentions. And that's why this integrity piece is so key. It is not about the words you say only. Words can be powerful and language is powerful. And I'm doing right now in Keys to Power a whole series of 7 stones to build the pillar of language. Today was number 3, and it'll be out like 15 minutes after we get done with this hangout. But it is all about what you project, what you intend, and what people get energetically from that interaction that shapes their feelings and belief about what you said and what you meant. How important is that in business, Manny?
That's the most important thing, because when people come to you for a service, they come to you and they read your brand's personality. And to geekify it a bit, it's called trans-empirical inference. Because when I look at you, I can't calculate everything about you. I can't calculate a curve of where you will be in 3 weeks. When I hand you, say, $20,000 for 2 months of training, I'm making a leap of faith. I'm inferring based on what I've calculated about your past belief, your past performance, what my friends have told me about you, what your reputation says about you. And then I'm saying, guy, there's something that I can't do. I can't do it myself. And I believe that you, who have walked a few paces ahead of me, can not only do it, but have the integrity to come back and take the energy and hold my hand and pull me forward in time and in personal progress those couple of paces, despite my reluctance, my resistance, my self-hate talk, my whatever. Here's 20 grand, get me there. It's that important.
So here's what I want you to do. Someone watching, or Manny, you do this. I want you to write trans-empirical inference in the comments, because I love that big, long geek speak word. So that is really cool, trans-empirical inference. Empirical is like an empirical data. It's what we see, calculate, and understand. Like there's 5 marbles here, and I can see 5 little round pieces of glass. That's empirical evidence. Okay, it's there. I see 5 marbles. Trans-empirical means beyond empirical, meaning beyond our power to quantify or not all laid out. And inference means a conclusion that we draw based on not quite complete information, but a set of data that point in a certain direction. So it's what Manny said, a set of conclusions about believing where you can get to with somebody that is not necessarily, in fact, it isn't specifically not entirely based on the empirical pieces of the situation. Trans-empirical inference, that's cool. Let's use that. Okay, so let's do one little piece. We got a couple, 3 minutes left. I want to talk about what it does for you. Manny, would you sum up for me, what does it do for you if you live in all areas of your life in integrity, not perfectly, but generally in integrity, and correcting intentionally and without pretending them away breaches of integrity? What does it do for you when I do that, if you do that?
It gives you self-efficacy, which is what you want. It gives you autonomy. It gives you a sense of self-worth. It gives you health. It gives you well-being. And it gives you a narrative at the end of your life that you're proud of.
So I'm going to ask everyone on this call, do you want a narrative that you're proud of? Do you want a well-being and feeling good about yourself and being in power and having all of that stuff? Self-efficacy, the sense that you're good enough, you're complete, you take actions that matter, you do things that help, and you have a narrative and a story and a meaning to your life from now till the end that actually means something and matters. Do you want that? And if you said no, I don't know what you're thinking. Okay, you're free to have that life. And unfortunately, there are many that do. There are many that do. Don't do that. Choose to have a life that means something. Choose to take integrity, a congruence between what you project and what you say and what you do. A straight line that lets you have relevance, power, and a foundation for people trusting and believing you, so they can have some trans-empirical inference. Got to have one of those. All right. Integrity. It is a key foundation piece for your personal success, for your business success. In Break the Cage Now, my private transformational mentoring program, and in Manny's Break the Cage MD, which is a program designed to help doctors. But in those programs, the principles of learning how to get that kind of integrity, live in it, and create income, power, and movement from that place are some of the foundation pieces. We do these hangouts to talk about what these things mean, but also to invite you to look at yourself and ask you if you're happy where you are today. And if you're not, okay, what are you going to do about it? Next week, we're going to talk about the last piece of the three-part series. The first one last week was what it is, what integrity is. Today was what it will do for you. And we've now done that. And the third piece next week is going to be, how do you get this? Okay, so if you're convinced you need it and you feel like maybe if you look at your life that you suck at it right now or half, then what do you do different? So next week, we're going to talk about some specific things to do that are different so you can get a different outcome. Manny, you want any closing thoughts?
I think I've thought everything I need for today. I feel pretty close. I have cognitive closure.
You have cognitive closure. All right, cool. So thank you all for being here, either watching this now live or watching it on the replay. Please leave your comments and questions in somewhere on the YouTube channel or Kellen Flukiger International. It's actually on my business G+ page, Kellen Flukiger International. And be sure you reference at least 9 times trans-empirical inference, because that's the cool phrase of the day. Thank you very much, and we will see you next Saturday. And until then, break the cage now.